I'm talking with Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, progressive rock band Jethro Tull, and what started this conversation off was a recent issue of the New Yorker magazine, was talking about Bruce Springsteen, now 62 years old, who started making music nearly half a century ago. It describes how even today Springsteen puts on these 3-hour-long, wild, rambunctious concerts, still maintaining his image as a rough and ready American boy, even though he is continuing to age. And immediately my mind went to my favorite band, which is Jethro Tull, which is headed by Ian Anderson, who continues to perform, and in fact is coming to Salt Lake City to the Abravanel Hall here in Utah in this fall, performing Thick as a Brick 2. And just wanted to chat with you a little bit, Ian, about something that I think I've heard you talk about before, that you started out in rock and roll with this persona that of a wild, jumping across the stage, just this larger than life persona, not really thinking about, hey, I may have to be doing this a few years down the road.
Well, I was thinking about doing it a few years down the road because
Were you?
Why stop when you're having fun? But in reality, I know that to begin with, I have the advantage that a sports person does not have. I mean, you have maybe 10 years of professional excellence, however good you are. Let's say from the ages of 20 through 30. As a musician, maybe you sort of hit your target, your peak, sort of in your early 20s, but there is no reason, really, as it's been demonstrated, I think, quite satisfactorily by a number of folks, including Mr. Springsteen, that you can continue to deliver, well into your 60s and maybe even into your 70s, or if you're in the world of classical music or folk music or jazz, perhaps into your 80s, and that's been done time and time again. So, we're very lucky, us folks in the world of arts and entertainment, whether we're musicians or actors or writers. We have professionally perhaps an anticipation of a much longer life. And I know when I was in my 20s, I did hope that I would still be doing it when I'm the age I am today, and the degree to which you're able to make it a physical performance depends on genetics, healthy living, bit of preparation. But I'm not going out there to be a striker for Manchester United. I'm not even having to be Tiger, whatever his name is, Woods, and swing a golf club around. I mean, it's I can take it easy if I want to and still play the right notes. But as long as I'm able to, then yes, I will run around the stage a bit, and it beats the hell out of going to the gym, I have to tell you. If I'm going to get my exercise, I might as well get paid for it at the same time.
That's right. Make some good music while you do it. You've always had kind of a persona that seems to mix the wild and the very soft and sensitive, even like the Aqualung type persona that goes from loud to quiet and introspective to raging kind of things. That seems to be able to play in as well now. The fact that you can play those loud and raucous type songs, but also you have some very beautiful pieces. Do you find that you play more of that as you go along? You're playing more of the soft pieces and not as much of the loud and raucous type?
No, not really. I think the mix has always stayed about the same. It's just that for me, it's a natural inclination, I think, to balance the different moods, the different dynamics, and the degrees of intensity of expression as a songwriter, lyrically singing, as well as a musician, arranging for a band or an orchestra, or perhaps just a quiet solo acoustic piece. I mean, my natural inclination is to try to build in those dynamics. It's always appealed to me about other kinds of music that I listened to earlier in life, and it does today. So I don't think that fundamental mix will ever change. I will become pretty bored if I just stayed, in the realms of singer-songwriter, acoustic guitar sort of stuff. I mean, I do need the the adrenaline rush of the big moments. But big moments only really are big in relation to something else, and that something else means you've got to write in that contrast, that the spaces and the music. And if you listen to the work of Beethoven, for example, I mean, he knew how to do that brilliantly. To create this huge dramatic expanse of huge sonic values that were very uplifting. But the biggest and fullest use of a big ensemble orchestral piece, I mean, it starts to become a bit mindless. Too much meat and potatoes don't make a great meal, and they fill you up, but they're going to fill you up too quickly.
Sure, and that as you've gone along, back in the early days of progressive rock, there were early comparisons to your music being somewhat relative to classical music. That, for instance, in the Thick as a Brick album being that full, all the movements and everything like that. So in some ways, maybe that's goes hand in hand with the fact that classical musicians didn't really have to deal with, as they aged, it didn't really matter. That things just got better in some ways, and maybe your music more.
Yes, well, I think the influences in my music from the beginning were acoustic, blues, jazz, folk music, church music, and then when rock music came along, it was it was quite an extreme opposite. I guess from the days of The Who and Cream and Jimi Hendrix, bands who had big piles of 4x12 Marshall cabinets behind them, and so that changed the face of rock music, as did the technological developments in sound reinforcement with big portable PA systems that we could take with us to play in arenas and even stadiums. So things changed, particularly during the early 70s, to make music, to really put it on a much bigger footing in terms of bigger values of everything. And, we were at the forefront of that around the time of Thick as a Brick and Passion Play and War Child, in those albums in the first half of the 70s, where all of that new technology was beginning to have its impact on touring music performances. I mean, I can remember when we first started playing in America as an opening act for Led Zeppelin. There would be the Zeppelin guys and us waiting at the baggage carousel while Marshall amplifiers and speaker cabinets came off the luggage belt. And they came off the luggage belt not even wrapped in anything. They just traveled loose. Can you believe that? But they did. And sometimes they actually worked that evening.
Hopefully so.
Sometimes they were broken. But, we were, it was all very simple, very basic. Zeppelin had 2 roadies. We had 2 roadies. They had their manager. We had a manager. And so it was a very simple affair. And then, a few hours later, we'd all be on stage at Madison Square Gardens or somewhere. It was very simple, very essential, and there wasn't really, much in the way of sound and lights when we got to a venue to play. 3 or 4 years later, that had all changed. 3 or 4 years later, we had big PA systems, and Zeppelin had their own chartered airplane to fly them around, and we, on the other hand, made a very deliberate decision to stay with the rented station wagon and keep things relatively simple. So I think there came a point where there were a lot of bands did go on tour, and they spent all the money before they'd earned it. Whereas we've tended to keep it relatively simple as we've gone along, and in spite of spending money on sound and lights and staging, we tend to have modest habits when it comes to hotels and airplanes, and generally, we try and keep it well under control. No big rock star on tour kind of stuff for us.
That's something that I think someone who has followed Jethro Tull over the years, and you specifically, would notice that you tend to have a certain, despite the large persona on stage, off stage and in your personal life, you seem to have a fairly normal, kind of pursue normal type things life, or at least a desire to do so. Is that hard with touring and everything else? Is it hard to be able to pursue your other passions, like with the salmon farming that you did for a while and the various things? Is that a hard thing to maintain?
That depends on your makeup. I think I and the other members of Jethro Tull and even the road crew, we're sort of all fairly modest people who, we get the job done when we're traveling somewhere to do a concert, but we try and enjoy it. We have a lot of fun doing what we do, but ultimately there are parts of the day when it's not about having fun. It's about going to work. Mm-hmm. And there's never been a sort of party atmosphere. I don't think we've ever, as a band, we haven't confused the so-called rock and roll lifestyle with getting our job done. We're all tucked up in. I mean, my crew are on a bus on U.S. tours, for example, particularly, and they're all asleep. I mean, the bus rolls out at maybe 11:30, 11:45. 20 minutes later, they're in their bunks asleep. And there's no big parties. Nobody's drinking or doing drugs or whatever. They've got to get up at 9 o'clock the next morning, which means waking up at probably 8 o'clock the next morning. They want their 8 hours sleep, and they've got to get to work the next day. So everybody is pretty well behaved in the sense of being ultimately like a bunch of boring granddads. We're all tucked up in bed, probably before most of the audience are. And we've had to work for the last 12, 15 hours. So it's a kind of it's quite the antithesis maybe of the stereotype that people might have in mind. But I am told there are a lot of bands like that, especially amongst even the extreme kind of metal bands. As soon as they walk off stage, having punched the air for the last time in a couple of hours of performance, they meekly go to their crew bus and sit down and have a cup of warm milk and turn in for the night. They're real pussycats, and I think you learn pretty quickly. You're going to burn out very fast if you actually believe in the mythology of rock music as it has been often presented. I think in most cases it's a little bit of a romanticism, a little bit of creating this debauched lifestyle, whereas in reality, it's not like that for most of us most of the time. I think it's over-egged somewhat. And as I was saying to somebody the other day, that I am not a non-drug taker because I have a moral stance. I'm not. It's not about. It's just I, frankly, never really got round to it, and I have no idea what is about. I've never smoked a joint, let alone anything else. But it's not something I've avoided doing through some astonishing willpower or whatever. I just never got round to it. I know somebody actually handed me some marijuana once in a plastic bag, and I looked at it and thought, I don't. This kind of smells a little weird, so I handed it to out of the other side of the window of the car I was sitting in, and wound down the window on the other side and just handed it to somebody outside, who happened to be a state trooper. Luckily, he saw it being passed to me in the first place, and I imagine he had a hilarious night back at the station with his buddies. But I've never got round to doing drugs yet. But maybe one day I will. Who knows? I may take up bungee jumping, skydiving. I may decide to be an international tennis pro. Maybe a Formula One racing driver. All these things are ahead of me. I've just never got round to them yet.
Prime Minister, why not? Go for the top.
I can think of a lot of
bungee jumping, much better than that.
Why being a prime minister would probably not be a good idea. And in fact, I was walking past Tony Blair's house just yesterday, I think, and actually no, it was the afternoon before, and noticing 3 seriously armed policemen standing on various road corners. We still have to guard our ex-prime ministers to this day, especially Tony Blair, because he's not very popular. And no, I don't think I'd like to go home every night with with a guy toting a Heckler & Koch MP5 submachine gun, standing outside my front door.
As you look back, then this it sounds like that rock and roll has gone from simple and kind of that the camaraderie of playing the club and just hanging with the guys kind of to the very large, the 70s, the arena rock and things like that. But for you, you've tried to keep it a little bit more simple, and is it kind of coming back to those days now?
Well, it's been like that all the way along. I mean, I think but from 1969, we started at the beginning of 68. By early 69, we were playing in theaters, and they were the classic sort of concert venues around the UK, and then we stretched out and started playing some of those venues in Europe, and then we came to the USA in 69 and played in places like the Fillmore East and a lot of Art Deco theaters that were being renovated and were the concert venues then as they are today. And there was a period in, say 72, 73, 74, 75 where we played some arena tours. We even played a stadium tour in 1975. That was a daft thing to do, but our manager thought, it massaged his ego anyway for us to do that. But most of the time, we were playing all around the world, playing in 2,000-seater theaters, which is where I have always felt at home, and it's what we do, and it's always formed the bigger part of our touring activities. Except maybe 72, 73 in the USA, but that's just a period of time where I guess we were playing arenas because we could play to more people in a shorter space of time. But it wasn't a very satisfying way to play music, especially and topically to play the original Thick as a Brick album in 1972. It was a very frustrating thing to try and play that on an arena tour when large numbers of audience were there waiting to hear, rock music. And Thick as a Brick was a much more detailed and progressive rock music conceptual form that embodied a lot of acoustic moments and quiet passages alongside the big dynamic moments. So it wasn't really satisfying either for the audience or for us. And one of the reasons I never wanted to play all of Thick as a Brick again was that I didn't really feel that I was prepared to take that risk, particularly just doing it under the name Jethro Tull, which I think suggests a varied repertoire and the best of Jethro Tull, I suppose, being the set list for the evening. And so to do this in this way is a carefully calculated risk, which so far has paid off because we've now played the Thick as a Brick tours, or the Thick as a Brick 1 and Thick as a Brick 2 in a number of countries and a variety of venues, and everything is fine. But it's taken me 40 years to pluck up the courage to try it again.
That's exciting that you actually have done that. You've gone against your whatever you said in the liner notes, your better judgment or whatever, and listened to those who said, "Do it. Let's have a Thick as a Brick Volume 2," and it is out now. I love it. I've got the disc here in my hand, and it's a lot of fun. But it is also coming back to kind of the fun of whatever happened to Gerald Bostock and the original so-called author of the original Thick as a Brick. You're as you went out to that point, again thinking back, of your mindset of those days. What you're saying is you really were excited about, hey, this isn't just a fun fling for this time of my life. I'm really planning on doing this, down the road. Hopefully people will still come to Jethro or Ian Anderson or Jethro Tull concerts 40, 50 years from now. That thought was in your mind, huh?
Well, I think when I was in my early 20s, I got used to the idea that having been, moderately successful for a couple of years, that I would have to do something pretty stupid to bring it all to a premature end. And amongst the stupid things you could do, obviously, were to, slip into that, as we just talked about, the stereotypical rock and roll lifestyle. Because back then, we have to remember that Jimi Hendrix was already dead by the time I was 25 years old. The casualties amongst many of the people that I stood on the stage with or alongside on a shared bill, there were a lot of people who were beginning to pop off back then, and since then, of course, a whole lot more. But the upside of the story is you've still got Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr still out there doing what they do, and Eric Clapton, and in fact, against all the odds, Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker too are still alive and playing, and that's great to see that there are some of these folks who have confounded our pessimistic expectation of an early demise. They've managed to sort themselves out and overcome health problems and are still able to do it. But it is true to say that I always had it in mind that, aged 80, if I was lucky enough to be in good health, and I would be fully intending to be a musician. And whilst I've done other things in my life along the way, including a 20-year period of being involved in aquaculture and fish processing, it wasn't an either-or episode. It was very much in addition to my musical life. But having got to the age of 50, I was, getting some kind of warning bells that I really would have to make a choice a few years down the line, that I couldn't continue to expand my business activities and my musical activities. Something was going to have to give. So about 10 years ago or 12 years ago, I began to wind down my other business activities and concentrate more on playing music, because it's good for me as a human being to spend some of my time at home, and I actually sleep in my own bed about 50% of the year, not in one continuous block, but I'm away for a few days, I'm back for a few days, away for a few days, back for a few days. It's only when I come to North America or South America that I tend to have to go away for 3 weeks at a time to make logistical and economic sense of traveling so far. But I can pop into Europe, play a show, and be back tomorrow. So it's just like if I lived in the USA, I could live in New York, and at a pinch I could pop over and play a show in San Francisco and be back the next day. It can be done.
Can be done.
So I don't really have to be away from home for huge chunks of time, and I get to see my children, and these days my grandchildren. Although the irony is, currently they're living and working in Atlanta because my son-in-law is an actor, and so they're all based in Atlanta for 6 months of the year, and coming home soon, however.
You really have had the best of both worlds, or all worlds, I guess this could be.
Yeah, I know. That's. I mean, I'm very, very grateful for having the best of both worlds, or all worlds. I do sometimes feel a bit guilty about it, because the older you get, the more you're aware of all the folks who don't enjoy those lucky breaks in life, and I try and do a bit here and there to recognize that we all have an obligation, I think, to try and support people, institutions, aspects of culture. We should be doing our bit to try and recognize the need that other people have. I mean, for example, I am not a Christian, but I support Christianity in a pretty dedicated way for at least part of the year when I do charity concerts in our great churches and cathedrals, and I do so with entering into the spirit of the Christian message. But it doesn't make me a Christian. Just as if I was a paleontologist, it wouldn't necessitate my having to have sharp, pointy teeth and a long, scaly tail. Just as if I support, gay-based HIV charities, then it doesn't necessarily require me to be homosexual. So, I'm one of those people who thinks, you've got to literally think outside the box and feel and respond outside of the box. If all you ever do is support things that are people like us, things that are too close to you, then I don't think you're really playing your part in the broader society. So I'm happy to do my Christian thing for a few nights of the year, but as I say, it doesn't make me a Christian. I hope maybe it makes me Christian with a small c.
There you go.
But not in the sense of being a fully paid up member of the club.
Well, that really, in some ways, kind of sums up not only your career, but maybe your life, which one can't do. That's way too tidy to do it that way. But you really have over the years. You've been behind some charitable events that have helped others, and even in what you write, I think that your messages have been toward the trying to get us all to think a little more nobly and a little bit more, toward the positive side. Even in the where am I going with this? Even with the rowdy and rocky songs, it seems like that your lyrics and Jethro Tull's lyrics have tried to look for the better in man. Would you say is that a fair assessment?
Well, yes, but it's also about recognizing some of the base emotions. I sometimes have not exactly an argument, but a spirited conversation with people who think that anger and jealousy are bad emotions that we shouldn't sink to. I always try and point out to them, if it wasn't for anger and jealousy, there would be no Shakespeare. There would also be a distinct lack of great movies, great novels, great ballets. Swan Lake may look very pretty. A lot of chaps in rather tight tights with bulging codpieces floating around the stage with a bunch of silly girls dressed as swans. However, it's actually about a lot of anger and emotion and jealousy. I mean, these are big emotions, and if you can turn those emotions to something as beautiful as Tchaikovsky's musical score for Swan Lake and the countless variations on the choreography, then you've done something with those emotions to give them a positive function, to recognize them, and in a way tame them, control them in a way that is productive and aesthetically satisfying. So, I do quite often think that I have to put myself in a bad place, mentally, in terms of grappling with those feelings of anger and frustration, and in order to come up with lyrics that hopefully allow me and in an ideal world, the listener too, to transcend the negativity of it and turn it into something positive. And I think that's part of what we writers, musicians, painters, actors, we do that. And case in point, my son-in-law plays currently the sort of main male lead in a series called The Walking Dead, which is a big success in 150 countries of the world now, and essentially, it's about zombies, a post-apocalyptic zombie world where a lot of people, eat each other. So on the face of it, it's full of, blood-curdling, dangerous, nasty stuff. But what it's really about is people coming to terms with each other and with their own fears and emotions. And that's why I think ultimately it's a very popular series, because it has the ability to transcend seeming disaster and grisly, blood-curdling moments, and actually explore the degree to which we are all dependent on each other, how we have to make society work for us, even when that society is turned on its head in the world of The Walking Dead. So, those are examples, whether it's Shakespeare or whether it's Officer Rick Grimes in The Walking Dead. You still have to deal with these emotions and tame them and turn them around into something positive and uplifting. And I think that's, in a sense, it's a very lofty way of describing what what we're here for if we're indulging in the world of rock music. But I like to think that is, whether people will voice it in those terms, maybe they don't even know they're doing it. But I think that's what we all love about rock music. It is ultimately uplifting. But if it gets a little angry along the way, well, it's for good reason and to serve a good purpose.
Somewhat cathartic, then. Would you? Do you see in today's rock music? Do you see a return somewhat to the more lyrical? It seems that.
Well, I wish I did, but I think most people are a little afraid of words. the vocabulary of pop and rock music is a very small one. The vocabulary of the New York Times is not particularly huge. I think I remember reading once that it was something like 800 words.
And going down.
Were actually all that was in a typical edition of the New York Times. I may have got that wrong, but it was a surprisingly low figure. I mean, I guess I would have thought 5,000, but no. In our relatively rich English language, we still tend to use or underuse the vocabulary available to us. And one thing I've always, well, not always, but mostly, I make a half-deliberate attempt to introduce words and phrases that I don't think have been used in pop and rock music before. Two of my favorite American artists, Captain Beefheart and Frank Zappa, did the same thing. That they used words, phrases, expressions that no one else did. And that makes them instantly recognizable and perhaps lovable. But it also, because they did it well, it wasn't just about doing something for the sake of doing it. It actually had a point. And so I think in both of those cases, you have people who really expanded hugely the vocabulary of rock music. And on my side of the Atlantic, that's what I try to do since, that's where the language comes from. And we, as members of Jethro Tull, can associate ourselves, past and present members, 28 of us, I think, the current count. We can all associate ourselves with being part of something that musically and lyrically was not just the genre-ridden side of mediocrity. We stretched out a little bit, and that's good to have done. And I hope all the past members of Jethro Tull, feel that sense of privilege and pleasure that they take in being part of that somewhere along the way. It's not a uniqueness, but it's a small club.
And especially how social media. I know that your website and various sites, of course, tie in with social media type things. But you see that impacting as well, kind of the 140 word count or whatever, or character count. You see, in general, the influence of social media as a good thing, bad thing? Does it really even impact?
Well, if you look at Gerald Bostock's Facebook page, then you will know that words are not counted, and what Gerald Bostock, fictitious middle-aged child poet, writes in his current guise as tour manager for me and my crew on the road. It's articulate prose, I would hope, written with a bit of wit, a bit of sometimes wistfulness, scathing, cynical. But I think it's something where I don't really feel the need to couch it in simplistic terms. And although it's linked rather to a Twitter account, you get the first, whatever it is, 110 characters on Twitter, but you can press the button and go back and get the full bit on Facebook. And, of course, you can find it also at jethrotull.com or iananderson.com, where Gerald Bostock's diary is there as well. It's an example of how we have to use social media, not just we in the creative world, but we're not using it to be sociable. We're actually using it as an extension of marketing and promotion, which is why British Airways have got a Facebook and a Twitter account, and any corporation of any size worth its salt knows it has to have a presence in social media if it's going to reach out to its customer base, many of whom show a remarkable resistance to move away from Facebook because they find everything they want there, and so I'd say social media. On balance, of course, it's a good thing for people who are using it for the purpose that it was originally intended for, to link people in part of a community of easy chat and easy access to each other. But of course, it's become a cynical, merciless tool of corporations, mine included. I make no attempt to disguise the fact that I'm totally cynical in my use of the social media, because the one thing I am not going to do is use Facebook to talk to a friend.
Not exactly a private chat.
An intimate friend, someone
Sure.
that I'm close to, family or close friends. I talk to the audience. That's different. But no, I don't use Facebook at all. Never have. If I want to communicate with someone who's a friend, I pick up the phone.
Novel
or I
idea.
Skype them so I can see them in their underwear. I mean, a number of times when I Skype my wife when I'm on tour somewhere and she's not with me, and she won't put her camera on, I get really angry. I say, listen, we wake up in the same bed, half the time, but she's really twitchy about there being a camera, and she's in it, and she's not really wanting to be seen in front of a camera, and that's to me terribly old-fashioned, because usually I'm lying naked in bed, Skyping people, and all they see is my head, but the rest of me is unashamedly exposed to the, if not to the world, at least the imaginary world. I have some friends on TV, and I'm frequently found lying naked on a bed, in a sort of one-way conversation with a news presenter or a politician or somebody that I might know, and I suddenly realized that I'm not wearing any clothes, and I found myself doing this, actually, oh, goodness me, because it's somebody I know. I mean, I could be otherwise watching a football game or a news program and lying naked on the bed and not thinking about it. But when it's somebody looking back at you and looks you in the eye from the television screen, it's a bit spooky. And so I kind of sympathize with my wife not wanting to switch her computer camera on if we're Skyping. But, I think we have to get over all of that. We live in a different world now. And in fact, my daughter, who I was talking to via Skype, in Atlanta a couple of hours ago, it's very often the case that if somebody walks into the shop, in their underpants, and it's kind of like being at home, really. It's a kind of an easy informality amongst families and close friends. So I rather welcome that world, but that's about it. I don't think I'm not a Facebook guy. I'm a little bit more one-on-one, camera and all.
Yeah. Well,
In fact, I write emails to people that are beautifully structured examples of English grammar. And even if I send a text, it has a beginning, an end, and some commas, and maybe a semicolon or two. And it's pretty irritating to have to do that. But I refuse to sink into this form of sordid shorthand that seems to inform most people's rather glib and horrible texting to each other. So Facebook and text, for me, they're there to fulfill a purpose, but don't expect me to forget my semicolons in the process.
Good for you. No emoticons for Ian Anderson.
No, but I sometimes get those from people. It took me a while to figure out where they were coming from, and I realized it was one of those little things you just click on and there it goes. But yeah, I do get some of those from some people I know who I hope will grow out of it sometime fairly soon. But you see, I'm a kind of a bit of a cranky, old-fashioned guy, and when I was 20, I was exactly that same person, and nothing has changed. I've just always been a bit sort of, I don't know, some people might call it a bit repressed or conservative with a small c, but I think it just has to do with being born into certain values, and most of the time you can keep those close to you with a sense of not exactly pride, but just with a sense of keeping you grounded in a certain place where you feel you're not being sloppy. You're not giving in to the easy and convenient ways to conduct your life. There are some things you should remain correct and maybe a little bit aloof for. And one of my painter for whom I have a high regard, long since dead, but he He was a painter of nudes, known for working with nude models in his studio, and he would never come down to answer the door to let his models in without first of all putting on shirt, tightening his, knotting his tie, putting on a jacket, and would only open the door to them when he was impeccably and fully dressed. And he remained, tie knotted, jacket on, while he, would have a 3 or 4 hour painting session. He would show his model to the door. She would exit the door. Then he would take his jacket and his tie off and, finish the painting. And I rather liked that about that. There was something about that formality. It seems a little stuffy, a little bit repressed. But it was actually his sense of not wanting to, in some way, perhaps appear to his model that he was anything other than a responsible, thoughtful artist, gentleman, and that in no way did he want them to think that he was, perhaps, or almost in denial of what he was doing, because his paintings were often, quite erotic. But his demeanor, his personality, his behavior had to be impeccably old-fashioned English. Well, although he was a Scot like me, but there was something rather charming about it, almost Dickensian about it, and I rather like those values, so long as they don't become too obsessive.
No, I think you said it well. A responsible, thoughtful artist gentleman. I think that's not a bad moniker for someone who is pursuing the arts and doing it in a way that hopefully will last longer than the top 40.
Yeah, and now all we have to do in life is get our politicians to behave in the same way.
Oh, we wish. What can we do to get that to happen, huh?
I don't know, but try and get some of the good guys to enter politics is probably the answer. But most of us good guys have got too much sense than to want to attempt a political career, because I think, sadly, most of us are, just see the downs. I mean, I have had a couple of occasions in my lifetime to sneak in through the back door of politics, and I've thought about it. But it's not a way in which I feel I could usefully serve the nation. I don't think I'm made of that stuff, but, who knows, maybe in another life, maybe another time, another place, perhaps some ability to find a way to enter a political life would be satisfying if you could do it well, but sadly few do. Largely because I think the wrong people tend to enter politics, and necessarily perhaps for the wrong reasons of self-aggrandizement and come from already from a place of somewhat corruption. If it's not corruption in terms of financial, then it's corruption of the soul. And if you haven't already got that dreadful disease when you enter politics, seemingly it doesn't take too many years before you are afflicted with that disease, and it is a sad reality. That those already not tainted before they enter politics, it seems it doesn't take too long before they are. So difficult job, and we all rather like the bankers. We lump them all together and think of them now as being the bad guys. But I know there are lots of politicians out there that are good guys and doing things for the right reasons, but they are rarely the ones who stand for the presidency or to be elected as prime minister. They usually got more sense than that, and they stay somewhere in the background.
That or they tend to.
A lot of good politicians, a lot of good people in all walks of life. It's just they're not the ones we tend to notice.
Mm-hmm. That's probably the key, isn't it? The press is running toward the other ones to tell us about them. Well, Ian Anderson, it has been a true pleasure to spend some time with you today. I was just thinking about back whenever it was, 70s, when you wrote Too Old to Rock and Roll, Too Young to Die, and there were certain critics and people that, took it the wrong way. I think in some ways you have the last laugh, that you are never too old to rock and roll, as you say. It's something that the true approach to it, beyond just the rock and roll persona that is just a more narrow view, to be an artist, a gentleman artist, a respectful, thoughtful performer and artist. That's a lifetime.
Yeah, and then you die.
And then you die.
And it's good to keep that in mind. None of us are immortal, and so I guess there is for all of us, whether we're 15 or 50, that life is finite. We have a certain, hopefully a certain future, but it's a limited one, and that we will be defined by what we do today, and more so, hopefully, than what we may have done in the past, because it's never too late to change. And just because you haven't been a good guy or particularly productive in life, it's never too late to try and move on to a more positive personal plane of existence before it's all over. So I think the people I admire in life are people who are inspirational, people who can inspire people like me to try to do better. And so, if in some small way, once in a while, you can be that figure for somebody else, then it's passing the baton, and so it always cheers me up when somebody says, "Well, you inspired me to do this, and I've achieved this as a result." And I'm always that's the ultimate feeling of success on a personal level. I think if you can enthuse and excite other people to do for them to do better in their own eyes, then that's the greatest gift I think any of us can have. Anyway, good to talk to you, and we'll look forward to seeing you in due course. I think in the second of our 2 tours this year, we wend our way through Salt Lake City, and as we get perilously close to an American election, and
yes, you will. You'll be in the
I
thick
guess
of it.
Salt Lake City will be one of those parts of the Americas that are bubbling on the night.
It will, and we'll.
So by which time I shall be probably just about home again. So I'll be watching it on television from afar.
There you go.
Anyway, good to talk to you, and
thank you.
We'll look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Thank you very much. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye now. Take care. Bye.